So Carol and Audra will now talk briefly about their work. Then they'll join the Taylor winners on the podium with Jason, and we'll have a panel discussion, Q&A, and we welcome your comments and questions.
Thank you all very much. I'm delighted to be here on this beautiful campus with so much talent in this room. Since I was a cub reporter, I have always wanted to do a Nieman Fellowship, and it just never seemed to fit into the lifestyle. So just like always wanting to go to Harvard, finally made it. The Herald for a long time was one of the rare newspapers in the country that continued to cover social services as a beat and child welfare as a specialty long after cutbacks and layoffs rendered those specialty areas largely non-existent throughout the country. And that was a good thing because Florida is one of those states where anything involving human services is poorly funded and even more poorly administered. And we went year after year after year writing these stories about children whose lives were cut short due to the abuse or neglect of their parents, but more importantly, due to the malfeasance of state child welfare administrators. And after writing that same story over and over and over again for years, we decided to do something different. The catalyst really was a horrible case that occurred in 2011 in which a 10-year-old twin by the name of Nubia Barahona was tortured and starved and beaten for months by her adoptive parents, while child welfare investigators and administrators almost willfully turned a blind eye. The state abuse hotline had received report after report from teachers, from administrators in the school who noticed her condition worsening, that Nubia was at risk, and those reports were mishandled and ignored. And finally, her body was found stuffed in garbage bags in the flatbed of her adoptive father's pickup truck. She had been simmered essentially in toxic chemicals after she was beaten to death, and her brother nearly succumbed to the same abuse. And the case so gripped and horrified South Florida that we felt that was the time where we simply couldn't ignore the issue any longer. And that led to a very, very deep dive for us from top to bottom, probably close to 3 years, a year and a half of very, very intensive work. And the results stunned even us, though we had been close to it for so long that we had a sense of what we would find. When we finally finished, the database contained the names and stories of 477 children that ballooned to about 535 now, and we're not even adding to it, unfortunately. One of the results of this series was that state lawmakers changed state law to finally codify that the welfare and lives of children has to come first. Unfortunately, social work practice has not kept up with the wishes of state lawmakers, and we probably will have to continue to hammer them if we want to see real results.
Carol will tell you that early on we decided that it wasn't enough just to report these statistics. As horrifying as they were, we did not believe that they could connect to readers in the way that we wanted them to. So we decided that each one of these children we would write a story about, all 477 of them. And that story could be small or it could be large, but we wanted to mark not just their deaths, but their lives. And that required us to crisscross the state, and we went to cemeteries, and we went and looked at autopsies, and we met with family members, and we spent a lot of time speaking with parents and grandparents and trying to convince them to let us tell their stories. And that was a challenge because we were also asking in some cases for these relatives to indict their own children or their own siblings or their own relatives, the people who are responsible for these deaths. But what it allowed us to do was to bring back the details that our readers still to this day don't forget. And so we were able to tell you that Aiden's truck was yellow in the garage when he died of smoke inhalation, and his pet was named Missy, and that Jewel, her favorite color was lavender, and that she wanted to be a princess when she grew up, and that, you know, one of the young men, he wore a Superman pajamas. So those are the kinds of things that we try to weave into every single one of these stories, and also into the larger pieces, so that when we were telling these stories, we were giving our readers the total loss, so they could understand the real scale here of loss. And I think that that's what, it wasn't just the numbers, but I think it was those details that allowed our readers and our legislators to understand how profoundly broken this system was, and for them, and to challenge them to do something, and that we as a state could be better and do better. And that was the mission I think that we were able to accomplish. Thank you.